Welcome to the Santa Maria College podcast, where once a month we sit down with members of our community who are creating, innovating, leading, and contributing to making the world a better place. From the college's history to social justice to entrepreneurship and innovation, we tap into a wide range of topics that affect our girls who are the leaders of tomorrow. So, come along with us for the ride as we pick the brains of those who have been pivotal in Santa Maria's growth and celebrate those who continue to be change makers. So I would like to welcome a very special guest today, Julia Kay. So she is an SMC alumni and graduated in 2009. So for those at Santa around that time, you'd remember Julia by her maiden name, Patterson. So Julia, along with her husband Jordy, established their business Great Wrap in 2019 in Melbourne. In short, Great Wrap manufactures cling wrap that is completely compostable, meaning that it will break down in the soil into carbon and water. The cling wrap is used to keep household items fresh and for items that are placed on pallets that need to be kept dry during transportation. Great Wrap has created this product, a world first, with the intention of eliminating plastic once and for all. The Great Wrap is driven by impact, fueled by demand, and has a 10-year vision for a world where plastic doesn't exist. So thank you for joining us, Julia.
Thanks for having me. Very exciting.
So I'm also joined today by OGA President Gemma Varone. So thank you
Thanks for having
coming
me.
on. You're welcome.
Now, this is also an extra special podcast episode for me because Julia and I were actually at school together. We spent most of high school in the same homeroom. So it's nice to catch up, and I've been following your journey, and I'm so excited to get to chat to you about it today, Julia.
Great. Thank you.
Firstly, how are you going?
Good. Yeah, really good. It's been a crazy year, and I've been saying that for about 3 years in a row now. So yeah, just massive. Done a lot of personal growth. Very exciting.
And obviously interesting times at the moment as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, from what I understand, Great Wrap is the only Australian made and owned manufacturer of compostable stretch wrap, which is pretty mind blowing considering we're in 2022. Your business is clearly a game changer and it really sets a precedent for all of us to make more environmentally friendly choices. Tell me a bit about your journey since leaving school.
Yeah, so obviously I didn't walk out of the gates of Santa Maria and think I'm going to get into manufacturing. I chose a path in architecture. So I think during my time at high school, I was really good at maths and I really loved art. I probably wasn't quite talented enough to become a professional artist. So I decided that architecture would be the path for me. So yeah, after school, I went on to study at UWA. I did my master's there and spent some time in Milan. I got an amazing job working at a sort of larger commercial architecture studio. Worked on a lot of design projects both in WA and Melbourne. I think I worked in education, so I designed a lot of schools and parts of universities. I mean, I even did some gallery projects, which was pretty exciting. But I think, in my time in architecture, I just saw like a huge amount of waste in construction. I mean, obviously, we see it every day. There's so much that goes into building one building. And I sort of started to feel as though the impact I was having probably, wasn't as profound as it could be. And I was feeling pretty frustrated by waste. That's roughly when I moved to Melbourne. And then, I met my partner and had similar frustrations. And we decided to, I guess, work on a product that we both used every day. So pallet wrap. I mean, you probably wouldn't have seen it unless you've kind of, been working in the back of a supermarket or on a construction site. But pretty much everything's like wrapped in petroleum-based plastic. So we were using it a lot and we thought, let's just reinvent this material. I mean, if we can change that one material alone, the impact's so profound. So, yeah, I mean, obviously a few steps between then then and here, but that's kind of the main story.
Yeah, and so obviously the benefit of what you've created is that it is 100% compostable. How is that possible? What is it made from?
Yeah, so we use it's called thermoplastic starch, but TPS for short. But basically, that is it's an extracted from a food waste. So like when you get a potato chip or something like that, there's a lot of waste that's made from that production process. So we take all of that, put it through a polymerization process, which basically just means we extract a few things, put it through some chemical reactions, and that means that it'll act very much like a polymer or a plastic material. So, yeah, we use that and a combination of other compostable biopolymers, and yeah, we manufacture them into stretch wrap. Yeah.
What made you think of potatoes? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, it was a really long journey. I mean, like, yeah, we started off and we were actually, we partnered with Monash University to help develop this technology, but we started off, yeah, my husband's a winemaker, so we started off thinking we could use grape marks, so the waste left over from making wine. There's like a big, just the skins. But we realized that, because that is such a seasonal variety, it probably wasn't going to work. So we did a lot of experiments and found that the amount of potato waste was big enough and consistent enough for us to develop a process in which we could yeah, build a business out of it, I guess. But yeah, a lot of funny experiments and a lot of mistakes.
And so this finished product that people use, the benefit obviously being that it is compostable. How long does it take for it to break down?
Yeah, so it takes our most recent test. It took 91 days in a lab in Belgium. But so to be certified compostable, your product has to break down in a compost environment in under 180 days. So yeah, we were pretty happy that it was coming in at half the time.
That's incredible. And why do you think compostable materials are the future, I guess, for people that are listening that might be interested?
Yeah, and it is a good question because I think it's a combination of material. Like obviously, recycling is incredibly important, and it's something that we all need to be focusing on. But I think we're humans, and by virtue of that, we can make mistakes, and things drop out of that recycling loop and end up in fields and oceans, and that's where they don't break down. So for a material like ours, which is used on such mass, it just makes sense that it can break down and return that carbon to soils and be used for, I guess, agriculture purposes. So yeah, I mean there's an exciting future for compostable materials and recycling. I think for me though, it's almost like, okay, we've made all of this plastic from when we invented it to now. Perfect world, we'd just stop, keep recycling that, and then go with compostable future materials in the future. I think there's a lot of so like soft plastics, like ours. It's the technology for recycling is still quite inefficient. So there's a lot of work and infrastructure that needs to go in to make that a completely closed loop cycle. So yeah, we just thought let's mitigate that and make this product.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the times with recycling, everyone's got good intentions, but there's only certain things you can put in a recycling bin, and people go, "Oh, hard plastic, soft plastic. What is it? Where do I put it?" So you might have good intentions, but if that product wasn't there in the first place, then you wouldn't have to
Yeah,
worry. Yes. Yeah.
exactly.
So I think it's pretty fascinating to think about the process in which grape wrap is manufactured, like from the potato stage to the final product. Could you briefly explain the process? Like, if we were to come to your factory, what would we be seeing? I know it's obviously very technical, but
Yeah, no, all good. I'll try and give you I can go on a little rant when I start talking about the factory, so just cut me off if it's getting boring. Yeah, so I guess currently, I guess our part of the products that we make now, we import some of that thermoplastic starch, so that's processed off-site. We have an extrusion line, a very big extrusion line at our factory, which is basically just like a huge hot screw that heats up our biopolymers. So they look like little tiny beads that we put in. That gets melted down, pulled cooled over these giant chill rollers, and that quick change in temperature is actually what makes the wrap sticky itself. We're in the process of designing our own sort of commercial scale biorefinery. So we've worked with a potato producer in Dandenong, which is very close to where our factory is. So they've got 100,000 tons of potato waste each year, which will be dropped off to our factory and go into huge fermentation tanks and be put through our process. So yeah, I think in terms of a visual, it kind of looks very similar to a dairy processing facility. But yeah, it's definitely a lot larger scale than what Jordy and I imagined when we started.
And you've also launched the Great Lab, which is the Innovation and Technology Department at Great Wrap. So they research, analyze, and come up with ideal wrap solutions based on science. How does the Great Lab fit into the process, and how do they continually find ways to innovate?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the Great Lab team's amazing. We've got Dr. Marty. He's been in biopolymers for the last 20 years, and he is just like, an encyclopedia of everything. I think, one of our big focuses in Great Lab is focusing on those feedstocks. So, as much as we spoke about the potato waste sort of discovery, we're continuing to work on that. So, one of the projects they're looking at the moment is a way to actually like sequester carbon and turn that into a polymer. So basically extracting CO2 from the atmosphere and turning that into a product we can use. So I think very much they're like the brains trust, come up with the ideas, and then we have our head of manufacturing sort of and team around taking that to commercial scale. I think one of the great things about being a new business is that because we are still in our formative stage, that Great Lab very much sits as a part of the business. There's no sort of decision that's made without thinking about the future there. So, and I guess that's because we only started 3 years ago from an idea. So it's almost like
Mm.
they are separate, but not at all. Like
So I think you would agree that education, is a big part of the puzzle in getting people to make the change from plastic to like compostable products. Most people, I think, to an extent, understand that plastic harms the environment, and products like yours offer a solution to that problem. If someone has been using a different product for their whole life, it's a huge habit to change. How do you approach this mammoth task of helping people, make the switch?
yeah, so basically, yeah, for people that don't understand or don't want to understand, I think part of our job, not only as a business but
Mm.
kind of as a brand, is to make a product that people want to use just because it's a desirable product. For 90% of people, they totally understand the food waste and compostable side of it, and they'll buy into it for that. But I think yeah, it's an interesting one because it is very hard. So I think though in our sort of product design process, from a really early point in the journey, we sort of knew that we had to be really close to the same price as conventional products so that we could get people over the line there. So that's been a big part of our sort of scientific exploration in improving those efficiencies. So really there is no need to make a decision almost. It's just like, well, it's the same price, it performs as well. That's sort of how you get people over the line. I think often with a lot of sort of greener products, you might have to make a sacrifice in be it price or functionality, and that's been something we've worked on a lot because I think that's the strongest way to do it. If you're living, a more amazing life and you're helping the planet, I mean,
At the moment, like with that they're really clamping down on plastics, takeaway
Yeah.
containers, things like that. Do you see a future where other products are banned?
yeah, definitely. And like, definitely, I think there's like huge power in legislation for sure. I mean, like, we've seen in France, like products made from cornstarch have been banned. I definitely think, obviously, we could do a lot more like that in Australia. I think also, there's huge subsidies on petroleum across the world, which makes those plastic products really cheap. I think if we saw a change there, that'd be a really quick way to make a difference. I mean, locally though, I mean, you guys are sitting across the road from that like beautiful Swan River. I mean, there's so many things you can do being connected to the environment there.
So Great Wrap itself, where can people buy it?
Yes, so just on our website at the moment, which is if you just Google Great Wrap, you'll find us there. We have just launched this new commercial factory. So basically, we had our pilot plant for the first 2 years. And to give you an idea of scale, we were making about 1,000 rolls a day. In this new facility, yeah, we'll be making 100,000 rolls a day. So yeah, very exciting. So we're getting that sort of all finessed now, and once we've sort of got that increase in supply, you'll be able to find us on all of the shelves. I mean, yeah, we pretty much just launched version 2.
So how has your product generally been received by people that use it?
Yeah, really, really, really positive, like really well, to be honest. I mean, for the most part, in the early days, people really bought into the story. They loved what we were trying to do. I think also just like, to people that have no idea about manufacturing, kind of giving it a go was really a big attractor. I mean, the product itself, um, yeah, our earlier iterations definitely were like, you could tell we were a startup. So, we went through about 5 different box iterations just in figuring out how to do that. I think now with this new machine and new facility, things are like really, really happy with, like, we're really happy with that. So yeah, the feedback's been incredible. So it's nice to see. It's very encouraging.
Were you surprised at the start by that feedback and how well received it was, being just a startup?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the first, like when we started, Jordy and I were like, "Oh, I hate using pallet wrap. Should we just get a container of product and see what happens?" So we literally, put a few posts on our personal Instagram, and then like within 24 hours, we were sold out, and we had like global airports reaching out to us, and Australia's largest winery, and I think that was the immediate like, oh well, like people want this, and then yeah, it's just snowballed from there, really.
I mean, it's really hard to believe that you only started 3 years ago. What was it like when you first started compared to now, the scale you were producing?
Yeah, I mean, so when we first started, we weren't manufacturing ourselves, so we had a contract manufactured product that we imported. It was Jordy and I working from our lounge room. It was COVID, so we had a corner of a friend's warehouse in the beginning that we'd pack orders from, but then very quickly we had to shift to our lounge room because yeah, we weren't allowed to in Melbourne. We weren't allowed to, leave our 5Ks. So now, yeah, it's crazy. We've got, this 11,000 square meter factory and almost 40 staff. It's very, very surreal.
And to think that you've done all that during COVID as well, it's just, it's insane. It's really, really incredible. You've just received more than $500,000 in the latest funding round of the Advanced Manufacturing Growth Centre's managed commercialisation fund. How did that all come about?
Yeah, so we had a research grant initially, so that helped to fund some of that research we took on really early on with Monash, and then based on obviously that was incredibly successful and enabled us to get sort of where we wanted to go, and so that was in relation to, I guess, commercializing that research. So that has really contributed to setting up this new factory. We've also been lucky enough to take on some investment from some big strategic players, which has helped as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's really positive to see. I mean, there is a lot of funding from the Australian government out there for sustainability startups in this space, particularly. So, yeah, I mean, we definitely didn't have a big kitty to start with, so it's been very helpful.
Yeah, it's good to be recognised.
Hmm. So you've been receiving quite a bit of recognition for your work, even on a global scale. So Great Wrap was ranked as number 6 in the most innovative Asia Pacific companies for 2022 by Fast Company, which is the world's leading progressive business media brand. What does Firstly, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
Let's hear.
What does this title mean for Great Rap?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, it's such an insane title to receive. I mean, it's very surreal. But I mean, for us, it's really helped to, I guess, yeah, put us on more of a global stage. So any sort of recognition builds consumer trust in your product. And it's also helped us, I guess, attract really strong mentors around the globe, not just Australia. Because people seem to take you more seriously when something like that happens. So yeah, it's incredible, super surreal.
And you more recently were awarded Young Victorian of the Year.
When I saw this, I was like, mind blown. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Thank you.
How did it make you feel? Because that's,
It's
again,
huge.
Yeah, I mean, at first I felt guilty because I was like, oh my god, do they know I'm from WA? Um,
It should be both, really.
yeah.
yeah. No, that was again like just another huge moment, and so exciting for the team as well. I think like they hear us get up in front of them and say talk about this crazy vision all the time, but to see that Greater Melbourne like really believes in what we're doing was really special. And yeah, it's just so cool.
So obviously, I mean, we've talked about, being an entrepreneur, and I guess it does have its challenges. And I think, as a consumer, I don't think we really comprehend how much work it takes behind the scenes to get to that point. At the start, you wouldn't have been receiving funding. So I guess, it's that sort of getting through that process. For our listeners who might have their own businesses, or for someone that's looking to start their own, what are the three most important habits that you think you should have to become a successful entrepreneur?
Oof. Top three. Okay. I mean, first one, I would say, and something that we did, even though it was really painful sometimes, is really, listening to your consumers and your customers. Like your first believers, they're usually the ones, even if you make a few mistakes, they'll be there at the end. So, I mean, I mentioned the box sort of iterations. I mean, that was something that came just based on listening to the customers. Even though, it can break your heart when you read an email from someone having a tough time with your product. It's really important to do and make sure that you, I guess, iterate on that feedback and you're not just leaving it in a pile and putting your head in the sand. Um, um, and then, yeah, probably number two, I think just like talk about what you're doing as much as possible. Because I think the minute you start putting it out into the world and the universe and the people around you, it really seems to take off. People start to, even though you might sound a bit boring to your friends, like the amount of conversations that or intros I've had just from having a conversation has really, helped us get to where we are now. Definitely. And then obviously number three, I think, I mean, this is kind of a cliche one. I'm sure everyone does has a cliche one. But like kind of you've got to look after yourself, like I'm like 100 meters from the beach. I have a lot of sleep. I go for lots of ocean swims. I think when I was in uni, I worked really hard. I'd, stay up all night and think that was sustainable. But I think if you're starting your own business, it really is a marathon. So you need to sort of um, treat yourself as if you're training for a marathon, not a sprint. So
At the start, when you had this idea, how did you back yourself? Like, I'm sure there were people going, "Oh, here we go. Like, what are you doing?" How did you find that power to back yourself and say, "No, no, we're going to give this a go, and it's going to be amazing"?
yeah, I mean, there was a lot of that, especially I think, I mean, for my friends, I spent 6 years studying architecture and then all of a sudden I was like, nope, I'm leaving. Um, yeah, I think in a way it's really motivating when people are like, you can't do that. I mean, like, there was one instance when Jordy and I went to visit a manufacturer here locally. He was making, a similar product, but out of plastic. And we sort of told him about the plan. And he was like, oh, you should just leave the manufacturing to the big guys. And it was something that I think like really stuck in both of our minds. And we were like, no, we're going to prove you wrong. And yeah, now we've got this amazing factory. So probably like, yeah, using that feedback as fuel is pretty good way to do it.
We talked a little bit earlier about mentorship and guidance. Who do you look for that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've got an amazing, I guess, like group of mentors who I really admire in business. Um, I think the way I've tried to, I guess, build relationships is like, there's certain things that I know are real blind spots for me. Like I know I can get too carried away with a big idea and not think about the economics or think about that. So I found it really useful to say that up front to someone and find someone who's really good at those skills and say, hey, I'm like just trying to round out my skills. Would you be up for it? And it's really nice if you're going to someone with essentially a compliment on the way they operate. Seems to work really well. But the more the better, I think.
Now, let's cast your mind back. I don't like to say how many years it's been since we were both at school, but cast your mind back X amount of years. You were a day student at Santa. You were there from years 8 to 12, graduating like me in 2009. What was your experience like, generally speaking?
Yeah, I loved high school. I mean, I remember being obviously very jealous of you, Gemma, because you were a boarder and I was a day girl, and I'm also an only child. So just the thought of living in the boarding house was like, I don't know, so romantic to me. But yeah, I mean, I think at school I was. I mean, you'd probably remember more than me, but I definitely probably got in trouble a little bit, but not too much. Yeah, I definitely wasn't the worst. Um, yeah, no, I just loved high school and just like being around all of those different subjects as well is something that you really take for granted. I think, especially after you finish school and then you go into something more specialized, you're like, oh, I don't have to do science anymore. And you actually kind of miss it.
Yeah, it was fun, I guess, having that range and having so many different things to do and sports and different
Yeah.
activities. And what were some of your fondest memories apart from not getting to be a boarder?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my favorite. Like, I mean, I did TE art, and I think there was a really small group of us in the end. There, maybe like 12. So that was probably my favorite time. I wasn't particularly good at art, but like, it was just a small group. Mrs. Withers was great. Like we all, would get in there after lunch, and it would just be so much fun. I was also really big, and I wish I was still big on it. But cross country, like I loved cross country training, running across Point Walter.
I remember you representing for O'Donnell in the cross country.
Oh yeah, do you remember? Because obviously we were both in O'Donnell, but we were not a particularly strong sporting group, and I think I had to do.
We tried, but
We tried. I think I got the call up for like 50-meter butterfly or something.
I don't think anyone wanted to do it, and I think we ended up just drawing names out of a hat.
Yeah, I don't even think I knew properly how to do it, and I just was flopping around.
Good old days. Were there any teachers or subjects apart from art and Mrs. Withers, I guess, that stuck with you, or any other memories that you look back on now?
Oh, so many teachers. Yeah, Mrs. Withers was a big one. I remember Mr. Powell was head of O'Donnell.
Yeah.
Mrs. Webster was awesome. Obviously, Mrs. Sariris also awesome. I think I was probably um, I think I used to wear a lot of jewelry to school. So, um, yeah, you might remember.
I just remember, yeah, a few people would get in trouble if, hair lacquers weren't the right colour, or we had too many bracelets, or the wrong earrings. Yeah,
Yeah. I think at the end of the year I had like in the drawer like a big bag of just like collected stuff.
getting to go and collect it at the end of the term.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but I was speaking to Jake a little bit about this before, about eco-sisters at school.
Oh, yes.
I'd almost forgotten, and then I was like, "Oh, we're talking to Julia," and I remember that we were both in the Eco Sisters, and I was saying to Jake, "It's amazing that Julia's ended up doing something so incredible." Looking at being more environmentally conscious and helping people, and then there's me.
No, you're doing great. That's so fun. I didn't forget about ecosisters, but it had kind of been pushed. That was great.
It was, and I think it was when Ecosisters had first, Santa Maria had just launched it, so we, I guess, were like the founding members.
Still standing strong.
It's still standing strong. I didn't actually know, but someone told me they've still got the veggie patch going, and they still do all the things, the Clean Up Australia Day, and all the things.
Founding sisters.
Do you think that your time at school sparked your desire to make a difference in the world? Was there anything that was instilled in you back then, or have you always, I guess, had that desire?
Well, definitely now that we're talking about ecosisters, for sure. I think, yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, that working in architecture and feeling a little bit like probably wasn't helping the greater community as much as I'd like to would have come from, you know, obviously a beautiful upbringing, and then, you know, everything we learn at Santa Maria, like, you know, spending time volunteering, and I mean just even the homeroom sort of group. I mean, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think we're lucky to have had, I guess, those values instilled in us. It's a lot to do with upbringing, but I think, yeah, school definitely comes into it when I think back at, you know, what kind of person I am now. What would your advice be to current Santa Maria students to ensure they get the most out of their time at school?
Definitely just sign up for everything. I feel like I was in like J division for most sports, but I was still showing up.
For softball, I distinctively remember being in J division for softball.
It's like how many people, like how does it go that deep? But definitely like I was right there with you, Gemma. So I think, yeah, you know, you've also got it feels like you don't when you're at school, but you've got a lot more time than you'll have in the future, so just make the most of everything. There's so many amazing things that you can do, a great way to make friends too.
Yeah, and I think it is important, I guess, for later on in life. It's good to give everything a go. And, you know, even if you're not good at something and you're in J division for softball, it's okay because you've given it a go. And I think people don't think about that enough now, that, you know, building resilience and having a go at things. You don't have to be the best, but if you learn something from it and you have fun, then that counts for a lot. We could talk to you all day, but we are at the end of this episode and we've loved it. It's been so nice catching up and chatting with you, and just hearing about what you've been able to achieve since you've left school, and especially in these past 3 years. It's incredible. Thank you so much for giving up your time.
Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you so much. So nice to chat to you both. I've loved it.
And it's so awesome to see so many years later, like nothing's kind of changed.
Well, do you know what? Like, I think it says a lot about the school that I think the friendships and the bonds that we form when they're here, I think it does kind of, you know, we haven't seen each other for years, but that bond does, you know, it does last forever, and we are always connected in some way, and I think that's really special.
Definitely super special. It's awesome.
Well, to everyone listening, thank you for listening firstly, and for your continued support. And if you head to the Santa Maria website, www.santamaria.wa.edu.au, you'll be able to find the full transcript from today and the video interview, as well as more information on Great Wrap and where to buy it and anything else you need to know. Don't forget to subscribe, let us know what you think, and thank you for listening.